pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Approval of the county board minutes.
So moved.
Had a motion, I need a second. Any more discussion? That was Mike Wilson. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Any additions or deletions? I need a motion and a second, gentlemen.
So moved.
I have a motion, I need a second.
Second.
We'll give that one to Commissioner Zelinski. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Steve, Public Works, come on up, please. And what do you have for us?
Mr. Chair, I just got to make a comment. It's a pretty rarity that Steve is here, the first one.
That's why I was just telling Tabitha, everything kind of looks backwards
Once
here.
in a
But you know what? We appreciate
I
different.
kind of like it. It kind of shakes things up a little bit. Pretty cool.
We'll try to keep it up. Mr. Chairman, members of the board,
Those are fighting words, excuse me, for some in the room.
as a board well aware, we had made application for funds through the Parks and Trails Commission for enhancement to the master plan for Belle Prairie Park. We were successful in that application in that we were granted $65,000 to enhance the current master plan and go through, which really isn't a total revamping of our master plan. What it really is meant to do is to take the projects that we had gone through, all of our public comment and all the work that we had done originally, and take those individual projects, and they will do more design on them. They will do more determinations on costs associated with them. It'll enhance what each of those projects will consist of. And so we just received back our fully executed agreement. The DNR implements these agreements. And so what we're asking the board is to authorize us to move forward with requests for proposals. We would be looking to bring on probably a consultant with landscape architecture abilities so that we could provide what we intended to when we made the application to enhance this master plan. So I see we have guests here. One of the things that would be included in here is the ox cart trail cart that was constructed by Mr. Manbeck, how that is displayed, how the information and the history of how it all developed, how that is displayed, where it's displayed, so it fits in with the overall plan and the overall development of Belle Prairie Park, that we don't just stick it somewhere and then 5 years from now, then it's in the way for something else. We want to make sure it's included and displayed and done in a way that as we move forward, we don't have to go back and do things over again.
Gentlemen, I'll ask for a motion, a second for more discussion.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to move on this.
Second.
I have a second. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Zelinski.
Steve, if I could ask, $65,000 to everybody's a lot of money, and I get that very clearly. But this is earmarked for planning. The $65,000 is earmarked for planning. It's not to construct a home, if you will, for the ox cart or construct a golf frisbee golf place or construct new roadways or anything like that. It's strictly planning. So when the time comes to construct anything, it's hopefully done the right way.
What we expect to get out of this when it's completed is all the projects that were vetted through our public process
Yep.
previously are now detailed in design enough and cost estimated enough that we can take individual ones out of the plan and submit for funding for implementation and construction of them, where we have it all ready to go. And so then I believe that it'll put us in a better position to obtain that funding by having this put together this way.
Thank you.
Any more discussion, gentlemen? If not, I have a motion, a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Chairman, that's
Steve,
all I have.
thank you.
Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Sheriff, come on up. I apologize that we didn't get you in here and all that stuff, but this went faster than probably you thought, so, but Sheriff, come on up, please. There we go.
There you go.
Morning, Mr.
Morning,
Chair,
Sheriff.
members of the board.
Morning, Sheriff.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If I may, I
Could you
think it's.
speak into the mic?
Sorry. If I may, I think before we have Sean give a sheriff's report, we should, I think would be proper to recognize and thank Mr. Manbeck and his efforts on providing some history and his work in developing that ox cart and that as part of the history of Morrison County and having that preserved at the park out there. And I appreciate the fact that he is here and his interest, not only in the work that he's done in the past, but on how this is recognized and preserved going.
Gentlemen, do I have any objection to have him come forward to kind of give us a 2-minute?
I have not.
I think it would be proper.
Please come forward and give us a little background, give you a couple, 2 or 3 minutes to explain this ox cart. Both of you, may your better half, I'm assuming?
Sean, you can help him with his report now.
Yeah.
You gotta get up here by the microphone, see?
That'll swing around too.
Sheriff, you can position that microphone for him.
Well,
Push you in a little bit more.
I really don't know what you want to know or anything like that about the car. It's been built for quite a few years. I have somebody said they would build a building out there for it and everything like that. Other than that, I haven't done anything or any.
Maybe give it a brief vision or whatever, why you built it or why you're bringing this forward to the board.
Well, years ago,
Cal Banks.
Cal Bankstead wanted to have a ox cart built and everything like that. And they had some plans and everything, and I got the plans for the cart and everything, and built it. And so, and it's been in the parades in Little Falls a number of times from north, and it's gone on parades from north and south and east and west in the parades and everything. And it's still, was in the courthouse for quite a while.
Do you pull oxes with it, or you have a horse or a truck in front of it? What happens?
So far, I haven't had any animal pull it.
Okay.
I've pulled it myself.
You're pretty strong then if you pulled it yourself.
It's very well balanced.
Okay.
Rolls
So what
right
did this
along.
take you, a day or two to build, or how long did it take you to build this?
I would say most of the summer
Okay.
when I did it, yeah.
And this has been built how long ago?
Oh, many years.
10 years, 20 years?
Oh, it's about 20 years,
Oh, wow, okay.
yeah.
Probably more than 20 even, huh?
It's
Yeah.
Oh,
more
good
like
for you.
35 maybe, something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner Blaine?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think it's appropriate for us as a board to extend our gratitude to you, Keith, and, you know, for your work and for your dedication to the heritage of Morrison County as a resident here and taking the time, the effort to build that ox cart that tells a story about the people of Morrison County, about the history of the people of Morrison County. And for me personally, I think it's extremely important that we place high value on our heritage and recognize that, and we preserve that for future generations to help people understand, you know, where it is that Morrison County came from. Where did these people come from? The things that they've done to endure and have that presence here, and for an individual like yourself to use your time, your talents, and your dedication to move along that same realm, I think is tremendous. And I'll say on behalf of all the rest of the board here, we're extremely grateful for you and your efforts that way. And I want to make sure that we recognize you for that, Keith. So, thank you.
Again, thank you for that brief, where this all came from. So again, we appreciate you, and I'm sure our county engineer will do everything they can to get that in our Belle Prairie Park. So thank you again very much, and happy Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Sean. Sorry about that delay, but it was well worth it.
It was awesome to hear, thanks. Before we start, I just wanted to say, I gotta push this back a little bit, sorry. So if you remember, we did, last October at the board meeting, we kind of talked about this ATV incident. We talked about how a father was injured and his 5-year-old daughter called 911. And I did a letter of nomination to the Minnesota Sheriff's Association.
And we sent the letter as requested too.
And you guys did a letter of support. And I'm here to tell you that they are getting the awards, both Avery, the 5-year-old, and our 911 dispatcher.
that's great
Amanda
news.
Dezerk. So thank you
Fantastic.
for that, for doing that.
Fantastic, Sheriff.
And just letting you guys know, the Life Saving Award, I'll read it to you. It says, this is how you can put the nominations in. So when I read this, it says the Life Saving Award is awarded to any employee, volunteer, or other person acting under the direction and control of any sheriff's office who is a member of the Sheriff's Association. This award can be given to any civilian person who has performed an act which may be deemed to have saved the life of any person, and such act has been reviewed and nominated by a sheriff of the county in which this event occurred. So I thought it was awesome how we could nominate 2 people, and with your guys' support, they're gonna get the award. So that's gonna be at the 2019 Minnesota Sheriff's Association Winter Conference at the Airwood in Alexandria on December, I believe it's 9th. So thanks again.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, Sheriff, and I trust that you're bringing that forward to Amanda and the young
Absolutely.
lady that was involved. Certainly not speaking for the board, but I think I am. On behalf of the board, thank you very much.
Absolutely. So, with that, we'll kind of dive into the monthly report. This is going to be covering the month of October. You'll see a couple photos just to begin with. We've been doing the fingerprinting for our kindergarten grade throughout the Morrison County. And of course, it's more than just fingerprinting. It's going to the schools, it's interacting with the kids, it's answering questions, it's displaying our K-9 dog. We try and get a group of dispatchers, jailers, deputies, so we kind of get an entire presentation from our office, so it's not just deputies all the time. So those are the first couple photos, one was at Lincoln Elementary, Little Falls. One was at Dr. S.G. Knight School. The second slide, or the third slide, I guess, you'll see it was in Piers, and we're continuing to do our ELLIS training. And if you remember, ELLIS stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. Not specifically in that order, but anyway, it's really just giving presentations to community members who want this free of charge. And what we're doing is basically doing a presentation as far as role-playing scenarios afterwards, so they know how to survive if an active shooter threat ever arose. So that's kind of what that's about. I actually did a short presentation last week to the ministerial group in Morrison County as well. So because we all know that it's not just businesses and schools, it's actually churches being attacked as well. So again, this isn't how to kill somebody, this is basically how do you survive? What do you do those first few minutes before law enforcement actually arrive? So that's been a good thing, and again, it's free of charge, and we're trying to promote it, letting people know that call us, we'll do it for free.
Mr. Chair, Sean, hasn't this changed a little bit? When these shootings first occurred, I think your training was for people to hide behind the doors and lock themselves in and stuff, where now I think you're training them a little more to get out of the building as soon as they can, aren't you?
Yeah, it's really run, hide, fight. So if you can evacuate and you can get out, do so, right? If you can do that. But we got to remember, there's been some active shooters, active shooting scenarios. One in particular was Florida, I want to say Parkland. Anyway, they pulled the fire drill, the suspect did, the alarm. So what's happening is they were actually waiting for the students to evacuate before they took them out. So knowing that, we've been in conversations with the schools too, letting them know that, you know, if you can figure out if this is a real fire alarm and/or you're able to check immediately to see if this may be someone pulling the alarm, it'd be nice to have that information, knowing that seconds count on lives as well, but being alert and cognizant of that fact. But yeah, if you can evacuate, do so. If you have nowhere to go and you have to stay in the work environment that you're in, then locking it down, doing more than just hiding under the table, utilizing your work environment, whether it's tables, chairs, barricading the doors, using your belt or anything to keep that door locked in place, making it difficult for them so they bypass you. And then, of course, if they do breach their way into a room, then you got to be able to fight, because you don't want to sit there like a sitting duck. And they talk about the OODA loop. Basically, you're observing, you're oriented, a lot of things are going through your mind, but if you can break that cycle and make the suspect think all over it and start all over again, it's buying time. So yeah, it's really just how to survive these, and it's been good feedback. So with that, why don't we jump into the training? I think I sent some photos regarding that. Yeah. So we did some training at Camp Ripley, and we did the MSTC medical training. It stands for Medical Simulation. It's a medical simulation training center at Camp Ripley. And I'm probably preaching to the choir. You guys know this, that they have state-of-the-art everything there. So for us to be able to get this valuable training and send our entire agency and every peace officer in Morrison County to this training, it's phenomenal. And you can see these mannequins that they have. We're actually working on these mannequins. You'll see some photos where the arm may be amputated, maybe the leg. They utilize like a red coloring you can see on I call him Deputy Axel if you go back one, but he works part-time for the police department too, Axel Lang. What's happening is they have like real life scenarios with these mannequins. So someone's actually behind a screen and talking. And what it is there's blood, sometimes fake blood, of course, squirting out of the arm or out of the leg, and we have to apply tourniquets. And you have to apply the right pressure before this bloodstream will actually shut down. So you talk about real life scenarios, this is what we're doing. And then there's gunshot wounds. How do we apply the dressings? How do you stop the bleeding? So if you look at that at first glance at this photo, it'd be like, holy cow, I mean, that looks pretty dang real. So we're putting tourniquets on, we're applying chest gauzes to stop the bleeding. If the suspect, in this case, if the victim's not breathing on their own, we'll be notified of that, and then we have to be able to apply oxygen. So you're doing a bunch of different things, and this photo, it's in the light, but of course, some of the photos coming up, we do it in the dark as well, which is realistic training. And of course, this doesn't have to be a gunshot. This could be somebody in a fatality or someone who survives and they're serious injured and their leg could be amputated. So this applies to real life situations that we come across on a day-to-day basis here in Morrison County. So are there any questions on that? I thought I'd share it with the board because this is.
Sheriff, it just looks very realistic from one of these photos. It's like, wow.
There is a
Video we
video,
wanna
it's
watch.
12 seconds. It'll kind
No,
of show
we're
you how
okay.
they're assessing the patient. They're communicating as a team, trying to figure out what to do.
Maybe can't hear it right now, sorry.
That's fine.
Extremely valuable training, extremely. I'm thrilled that we're able to work with the folks at Camp Ripley, interact with them, make this stuff available for us. Every agency in the state of Minnesota does not have the access that we do. I think it's a special moment for Morrison County, so I
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
So moving on, we'll just, our criminal complaints, I'll kind of go quick because I want to talk a little bit about jail texting. So in October 2019, you'll see we had 106 criminal complaints. I'll just highlight the biggest portions of them. So if you see the bottom right, 10%, which is in purple, of the pie, if you go to our criminal complaints, you'll see we had 11 disturbing the peace complaints. You'll see to the left of that, in the blue portion of the pie, it was 14%. We had 14 damage to property complaints. And then moving to our middle left, which would be 11%, the red, we had 12 thefts. To break down that, we had 1 theft from a person, 7 thefts from a building or yard. 3 of those included gas drive-offs, and 1 was identity theft. And then the other big one that we have is 15%, and that's gonna be in the green pie shape, and that was 16 frauds. So again, we continue to see our scams, but the good news is the majority of these, it's just a scam where they're reporting it to us. They actually didn't give their personal information. So the education, the news releases, everything seems to be working, which is great. If we go to our traffic citations, here we had 88 verbal warnings, we had 11 written warnings, and then 11 for speed. You can see we did have a hands-free violation, but also a lot of them are in the verbal warnings as well. So just because we're not seeing many citations doesn't mean we're not stopping and coming across that. I'll kind of just skip down to the jail information. You'll see that we're averaging 8 inmates from Itasca, which is good. You remember a few months ago, we were down to basically 1, sometimes 2. So that's good. That's coming back up. And if you go to the next page, you'll see that our Oda County inmates, we brought in $17,490 for revenue. So that's kind of where we want to be and what we kind of want to target versus the couple grand so. That's good that the numbers are switching. I think more people are getting sentenced now, which is obviously helping us and bringing us more inmates from out of county.
Got a cold, too.
Yes, they need a
Place
home.
inside.
As far as drug cases going on, I have a little synopsis here. We had 2 search warrants in St. Cloud they assisted on, our Violent Offender Task Force. We had 1 search warrant in St. Joe, all that stemmed from things going on in Morrison County. 1 fugitive apprehension assist of the DOC, Department of Corrections, that we helped out on. We had 1 individual charged with a DANCO violation in the jail due to reviewing jail text messages. So this is what I'll get into a little bit later. With the jail texting now, it's another tool for our investigators where they can query by, you can query by name, you can query by different words like gun or fight or assault or whatever you want. It'll pull everything up, and then you can just kind of go through it. And we had one of our investigators on the Violent Offender Task Force going through some of these text messages, and they found a DANCO order, a domestic abuse no contact order, where the subject was supposed to not be having contact with somebody, and they were by texting. So,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, that individual was in jail?
correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
1 drug investigation where we assisted Little Falls Police Department. 1 search warrant in Little Falls for narcotics of a fugitive apprehension. This is where we worked with Stearns County. We found out that the suspect was in Little Falls. We ended up doing a search warrant. We ended up doing a warrant for that subject's arrest, and we utilized our SWAT team to grab this person. It was a first-degree charge, and that's why we got involved. And with the subject's history and mention of weapons, our SWAT team was utilized. We had 1 search warrant in Buckman for narcotics. We did a news release on this as well. We had a first-degree sale of methamphetamine on this subject. And again, with the history, And with the known factors, it qualified for our SWAT team being utilized. And then this subject was actually turned over because even though they lived in Morrison County, we had a conspiracy case against them in Stearns County. So they were turned over to Stearns County. There's more consequences with the conspiracy. Basically, it's, when conspiracy could be when you're working with two or more people for the profit of sales. More people are obviously getting money and are working it, so that way we want to tie everybody into it if we can. So they had the conspiracy case because of the people they were working with in their county, if that makes sense. And then we had 2 assists with probation to apprehend a subject on a narcotic after detention arrest. Any questions on that?
So far, so good.
Okay, so we'll get into jail texting. I'll just go real quick on this. So just so the board's aware, I sent an email about this on October 3rd, 2019. We started texting in the jail. To date, since October 3rd, 2019, we have $1,250 in profit.
Can you help me out? How do you get profit from that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So.
Maybe you're coming up to it too, so I don't.
Yeah, so the county makes 3.5 cents per text, and that's ingoing and outgoing. So that is also up to 140 characteristics. So what we find out is, like one text, if I'm texting you, Mr. Chair, I could have 140 characteristics and then send it. That's 3.5 cents. The problem is, well, it's not our problem, it's their problem, is sometimes they're responding to a text and putting K or OK. So there's 3.5 cents right there, where they had up to 140 characteristics. And that's for ingoing or incoming and outgoing text messages. So it's an easy revenue that we're actually making. And then as noted earlier, it's an investigative tool that we're utilizing as well, because our investigators are finding information that is helping us in cases. Some of the information that we got were building cases, we just haven't got there yet. And some of it is black and white, where it's clearly a violation. So our investigators are utilizing it, it's coming in handy. We're making money on it, revenue for the county. And then as far as the inmate behavior, believe it or not, they have to behave, because if they do something out of the norm, out of what our jail handbook and rules say, they're not getting it. So we're actually getting better compliance up in the jail as well.
So, Mr.
Sheriff,
Chair?
if I may, if I'm, one of my friends or family is in jail, do I prepay for their cell phone, or they prepay? So how do you get them to pay for that?
The inmate has to prepay, correct. Or they could have somebody call in on their behalf and
Okay.
pay. Yes.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Jelinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff, I just need to have a quick explanation. I'm in jail. I'm sending you a text. I'm paying whatever it is. to get
3.5
it.
cents.
And whether I say hi or whether I use 140 characters, doesn't make any difference. I spend $3 or 3 cents to send it to you. You then reply to me, hi, or you use 140 characters. I could care less, doesn't matter. That's 3 more cents that comes in.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Incoming, outgoing, 3.5 cents per 140 characteristics. But like I said, we're reviewing some of this, and it's okay, bye, love you, back and forth, which is 3.5 cents, which they could add 140 characteristics if they wanted, but they choose not to sometimes.
And I'm assuming, I don't know if you ever see the young kids, everything is abbreviated. I don't even understand what they're saying. I'm assuming that's the same thing, so your sheriffs are probably getting very well acquainted with the short versions of how texting works, huh?
Yeah, there's some things to be learned on that end that we're picking up fast, but I
Mr.
guess
Chair,
if
I've
you have,
gotten an LOL or an OMG
Yeah,
from you
there we-
too.
yeah.
if you have teenagers
You're right.
at home, it's
Yeah.
one way to start.
You
I
learned that
I was just gonna let you know too, this is something that's handed out, the tablets where they text on. This isn't something that they, go to bed with and 2 in the morning they can wake up. This is like business hour type deals where it's just not around the clock, so.
But I think, again, I'm glad that you're pursuing that texting, because I know that was a concern of yours, and it looks like your guys are doing a good job, and it's working out.
Yeah, absolutely. I see it being another tool that we're using that's going to help us out with our investigations as well, and that's the big thing.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Sean, so if you're an inmate in the jail, all communication that you would have with the outside would be open to monitoring by the sheriff's department. If somebody, if I'm an inmate and I'm talking to my friend on the outside, that phone conversation is recorded and reviewed by the sheriff. There is no, in other words, what I'm saying, there is no confidential communication if you're an inmate. Is that correct?
So you are correct. There's a waiver that needs to be signed, so the inmate's aware that everything is being screened. It's no different than we have like Reliance Telephone. All our phone calls are recorded. The same company we're working with for the texting, and it's the same thing. They have to sign a waiver knowing that everything they text, incoming and outbound, is being, or could be, subject to review.
Okay, and so that total that you had of revenue for texting was that 1,000?
$1,250 for 1 month.
For 1 month?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you, Sheriff.
Anything else, Sheriff?
That's all I have, unless.
Gentlemen,
the
anything
board
else
has
for
questions
Sheriff?
for me.
Sheriff, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Nice
you.
information.
All right, thanks.
And it looks like we have a Nathan here, but this one's a lot better looking, so I think Becky can come on up.
Good morning, Becky.
Good morning. Good morning. Surprise. Nathan was unable to make it to the board meeting today, so I am taking his place. Just a couple of things that I wanted to mention with the 4-H program. We, of course, wrapped up our awards program. Thank you, Commissioner Wilson, for being there for a short time. Had a lot of fun and recognized a lot of youth and families and adults through that process. This time of year, we're looking at club chartering and federation chartering. It's a process that the clubs go through and the county level to kind of show their commitment to providing opportunities for youth. And they commit to meeting at least 6 times, giving youth an opportunity to share what they're learning, providing a chance to produce goals for their group, looking at developing relationships with caring adults and providing that safe environment for youth to learn and grow. Of course, we're plugging away at enrollment. We've had quite a few new members. We do have a new 4-H club in the county, and that's been bringing in some new membership as well. Also, upcoming project nights and Clover Buds have been scheduled for the new year. We're going to do some fine arts work, project bowl, photography, youth leadership, project selection opportunities during our project nights, and Clover Buds will include aerospace dogs, forestry, fruits and vegetables, and terrariums. And then I did want to mention for Nathan, because I know it's very popular here, he has planned a private pesticide applicators meeting in Little Falls here in the boardroom on February 3rd. And so a quick plug for that. Of course, the other educators have lots of things in your board report too.
Gentlemen, any questions or comments for Becky at all?
Busy.
Always, yes.
Yes.
And again, thanks for the information. Again, I always like the updates that you guys give, so just to show that how involved 4-H is in our county. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Becky, have a great day.
You too.
Chelsea, come on down. Good morning, Chelsea.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chelsea.
Hey, good morning. I think first on the report, do we have the October 31st cash report?
I can get there.
Clear Lake.
Oh, sure.
Lions
so we
Club
have-
raffle.
Sure. First, we have the gambling permit, so I'm here to request approval for the Clear Lake Lions Club to conduct a raffle on December 7th of this year at the Grub and Pub.
I'll make a motion on that.
Second.
Any more discussion? I have a question. Why are they doing the Grub and Pub if they're from, is this Clear Lake, Minnesota, I'm assuming they're from? the Lions Club?
So they have quarterly raffles, and I think they chose the Grub and Pub for
Oh,
fourth
okay.
quarter, so.
Okay, all right.
Since it's in our county, it comes to you.
Yep. I have a motion, a second. If there's no more discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Next, I have the cash report. So this is cash report ending October 31st, 2019. And just to give you insight, the last time that I came to board and talked about quarterly reports, I talked about callable CDs. And since then, I've had 3 investments called on, a total of $1.3 million that I wasn't planning on having to reallocate dollars. So since then, I was able to utilize our CDARS program with Unity Bank, and also we moved a little bit of money to the Magic Fund under their CDs.
So Chelsea, when you get these called on, are we getting better interest rate, or are we still struggling? Even, so let's say Bank A is calling a report because I understand why interest rates are lower, but we're getting 3%. Are you getting a match to that, or are we kind of losing out on those?
That's a great question. So the struggle is that the rates are trending downward. In this case scenario with 1.3 million called on, the difference of working with local banks and our brokers, we're actually coming ahead a little over 0.5%. So just communicating with who we work with and what they have to offer, there's a benefit here.
Yes, sounds like that's a great thing that you did, Chelsea, by bringing this forward to the board
Yes,
in
so,
past months or whatever, so.
Mr.
So-
Chair, I would assume, Chelsea, that it doesn't always work that way. That sometimes we could get called on whatever that was making, who cares, 3%, and now we have to do something else, and we may not match that 3% also.
we could get to that point, yes.
We're
Yep.
not there yet, but you never know.
We are
But you
not
never
there
know.
yet.
I got it. Thank you.
Just to give you an idea, some of them that were called on, interest rates that we were holding was 1.5, and we reinvested at 1.78, so not much more. This last one that I got a phone call on yesterday was a rate at 1.25, and I was able to invest a 2% at 3 years. So it still had 2 years left for maturity, and I went out a 3-year at 2%. So
You know, again, this makes me wonder, because when you took these investments out, interest rates are a little higher, but yet they're only paying 1.25. Why are they calling them in? I don't understand, but that's a technicality or whatever, so, right?
yes, so the callable CDs that we have in place, they can be called on
Right.
quarterly, or say they're a 5-year or a 5-year term, and the first call can be after the first year. And then we can get a phone call. Normally with these callable CDs, they're step-up CDs, so hopefully we start at 1%, and our goal would be to end at 3% for investment return. But that's not always the case, and it's normal practice that they're called on before maturity, so.
And again, 0.25%, 0.5% on $1 million plus, that adds up.
It sure does.
Anything else?
So,
Commissioner
Mr. Chair, if I may, you said it was about 1.5 million that was called?
1.3
One
in the
point-
last, since end of October to now.
Okay, so basically 2 weeks, but 1.3, so out of that 1.3, how much was, what percentage of that would have been invested back local through like the Cedars program or with Unity? Would we
So the
say
Cedars- so
half
the-
maybe or more?
Sure, so the CDARS program, out of the 1.3, I moved a $500,000 over there with having the option to have the CDARS program in place, so I moved a $500,000 there. I also moved a little over 230,000 to the Magic CDs, which we didn't have in the beginning of this year, that relationship with Magic, we only just had our liquid. We didn't have tied down investments. So we moved locally 500,000. And out of this 1.3 million that was called on, where these investments were holding was at Wells Fargo. So our broker that I work with is out of the cities.
Okay, so, and so you had said you had listed two of these reinvests that, one at, went from 1.25 to 2%, and the other one from, a little bit of an adjustment up. And then there would obviously be one more of those calls, but on any of these, are we taking a step back in interest rate, or are we at least able to hold our own in how you reinvested these?
So overall, with these three, we're coming ahead 0.53% increase
Excellent.
over these three. Looking at a total, one of the investments, the interest was 2.2, and we went to 1.75. So we did have to take a
A
step
hit.
down.
Okay.
But then we also had $500,000 that was at 1.25, and we went to 2%. So it's that give take, and that's where we come ahead.
And I say I'm a little knowledgeable, a little bit on his investments, but I'm glad you're utilizing all of them, especially that Magic Fund too, because again, that's a great asset for the county, how we work with that too.
Well, and why I wanted to bring it up today is I know you see this cash report monthly, and out of these dollars that were called on, 900,000 was revenue funds and 400,000 was solid waste trust funds. So we also, in the auditor treasurer's office, have to keep those dollars to the fund.
Anything else, Chelsea?
That is it for the cash
All right.
report.
Yep, well,
I just want to say thank you for providing the information, not to us, but to the constituents, and showing that we're being open and honest, and that you're doing a great job with the constituents' money, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that, Commissioner Mayor, that we're getting our best bang for the buck, and Chelsea's doing a great job for that.
Thank you. Next, I have a request to approve all the bills to be paid.
Gentlemen, I need a motion and a second. This will be a roll call to pay all the bills.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we pay the warrants.
All right, I need a second.
I'll second it, Mr.
Any more discussion? If not, Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine. Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Zelinski.
Aye.
Myself is aye, motion carried.
Thank you. That is
Chelsea,
all I have.
thank you.
Thank you.
For the great job.
Appreciate it. Oh, I see someone just walked in. How about, let's hear about the building report. What do you think, Deb?
I think that's a great
All
idea.
right.
How does it feel, Mike, not to be the very last one on the docket here?
Oh, I'm not the last one?
No. Not even close.
Oh,
I could take a break and then we make you wait
well, I
more.
thought the time might have been different today.
Yeah, they're just throwing a little curve at us today, so.
We're trying
they're
to keep
shaking it all up.
Commissioner Winter on his
Yeah, because
toes.
I'm kind of lost because everything is kind of, yeah, okay.
But you're
What do you have
handling
for us,
the
Mike?
adjustment well, I must say.
Yes, I am. Mike, what do you have for us?
I just handed out the latest budget, so if you have any questions on anything you see on it. Otherwise, upstairs in the construction area, this week we're finishing up the flooring, the carpeting at least. The VCT will be finished on Monday upstairs. We're installing glass today. And then next week, we'll do the painting touch-up, and then we'll do a punch list on, I believe it's the 27th upstairs. So the week following Thanksgiving, we'll go through, do punch list items. The cleaners will be in on the 5th, and then furniture will start to be set up on the 9th. So,
Now, I know you brought this up before, Mike. I see the contingency fund, we still got something there yet, huh?
yep, it's 98,000. And in looking at that, I feel comfortable with where that's at. That's gives us about 20%, I think, left of what we started with, and I think, square footage wise, I think we only have about 12 or 13% left, so, and we've done all the boilers, we've done the air handling units and.
Well, that's good to hear.
So,
Mr. Chair, we have a building committee meeting next Tuesday following the planning session. And we'll go through a couple of other items that we're looking at that we've discussed before. We have some pricing back on some of the additional work that could be considered in the sheriff's office area when it comes to systems, the replacement of some pipes and some different things. So we have some pricing for that and some different updates on where we're at with the parking lot, and if you want to do some work there, some different things that have been on our radar for a number of years.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Zelinski.
Mike, is there anything that's jumping out at you here?
no, not at all. The biggest one I look at is the contingency, always. That's kind of the fund that we work off of for the reserve portion of it.
Okay.
I did get some, for the asbestos, for the 60s building, some preliminary numbers
Yep.
from the gentleman who handles that for the county, and it looks like we're gonna have plenty of money left
Okay.
in that line item also.
And I'm gonna
So-
throw a curve out there. Securities, I know Commissioner Jelinski, he's always talking about that. Since the tragic mishap we had here, 10, 15, 20 years ago already, we're kind of the least secure building there is coming into, the future as far, so are we gonna be setting the locks differently when people come in now, or, so, see what I'm saying, as far as entering the building, are we gonna be closing any doors? And you can enter pretty much all sides here pretty easily.
Yeah, well, I would have to argue a bit on the fact that we're the least secure, because I know that there's many variations of that throughout. We certainly don't have one access that's manned by human, like deputies that are manning a metal detector, that's for sure. We debated that at length at the outset of the project, and it was the board's direction at the time that this is the public's house, and we're gonna continue to be the public's house, and we're gonna do what we can to improve safety. But given the setup of the building, which we're kind of dealing with something that, was handed to us and is a bit of a puzzle, that's been put together throughout the years for very good reason, and given the parameters that folks had at the time. So given that, to limit to go down to one entrance, that would probably be what I think people view as the most secure scenario, where you have to go through a metal detector to enter the building in any way. And it is manned by staff the entire time the building is open, isn't something that's in the plans right now. However, it is something that if we have to move towards, we certainly have thought about that in the future. I think we've substantially improved security in a number of regards, though. The ID badge access and the limitation between where the public and the employees have access to is a huge step in a safer environment. Prior to that, as you recall, we had many offices that had just open doors, and anybody could walk in and out of those and have access to staff. So that's huge. We have and will limit one access over on the west side of the building for entry into the sheriff's office now, or that jail. That's just going to be open during jail visiting hours when the main entrance isn't open. So like on Saturday visiting hours. So we have taken steps. I think we've taken some good steps when it comes to even security cameras and being able to monitor and respond if there's an incident. So we've definitely made advancements.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Zelinski.
You are correct. Security is a very important thing to me. And if Ms. Gruber would not have said it in her closing statement, I would have, and that'd be the camera issue, that we've got our doors, that we're gonna be increase of security in that mode. It's a real tough thing. You can go to many different agencies, and we all have, to where some agencies, maybe few, I don't know, that in order to get in, you better take everything out of your pockets, and you better not have a pocket knife with you, because you're gonna take it back to your vehicle, and that's where it's gonna be stored. And I have heard personally from commissioners that have said, this is the people's house. And that some counties have removed that type of security. Good, bad, right, wrong, none of us can predict the future, so it's a tough thing, but I think that the steps that we have made in the camera system alone is increasing our security a lot. Thank you.
All right, well, I appreciate that. Anything else, Mike?
No, if you wanna come up, take a tour, so.
That looks
I'd
nice.
I'd love to take a tour. If we don't, I'm sure we might see you one time before Christmas, otherwise.
Oh,
we
yeah,
don't.
yeah, so,
Thanks for taking the time to come.
Appreciate it, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
yep, thank you.
Thanks.
So we're moving right along here. Do we have Brad? Brad, do you wanna, yeah, what the heck, did anybody need a break? I'm good, but it's up to you guys. All right, we're good. Brad, come on up.
Mr. Vold told us he absolutely won't be available until 10 o'clock, so we scheduled in a little break.
I was readily available all morning, however, I was being supportive of staff who had other things going on, so,
And we like when you're supportive of staff.
yep. So I have a couple things to sign, and I'm gonna have Katie just go ahead and move into the adoption proclamation.
All right.
Morning, members of the board.
Morning, Katie.
Morning.
Chair to sign. So go ahead with the
Ready?
proclamation.
All right. So November is National Adoption Month. And so the proclamation is, whereas there are over 900 Minnesota children in need of permanent and loving homes that are under the guardianship of the state of Minnesota, 16 of these children that need permanency by adoption are Morrison County children. And whereas almost all of these children have special needs because of physical, mental, or emotional disabilities, because they must be placed as a sibling group or because they are school-age children. And whereas these children need extra patience, support to help them overcome previous hardships, children can benefit from the connections to their families and their community supports. And whereas children that age out of foster care are more likely to become homeless, incarcerated, or need the support of welfare benefits. Whereas in 2019, there will be 17 Morrison County children with special needs adopted by families. These families are able and willing to adopt children who have special needs, willing to attend special services and training in order to meet the needs of those children. And whereas children waiting for adoptive parents, as well as children and families have completed adoption, require and deserve community and public agency support. And now, therefore, be it resolved that November is hereby declared Adoption Awareness Month in Morrison County.
Gentlemen, I ask for a motion and a second.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion, I need a second. I have a second. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair, other than, I can't take my hat off, if you will, enough times for those that open their doors to be adoptive parents. It's, sometimes you can look at the whole situation, you can say, pretty sad situation, but flip the page and it becomes a pretty happy situation that those folks are out there. I thank you for what you do, and I thank those folks for being the adoptive parents that they are. Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to, I even brought up the extension, let people know what's going on. Here's another one valuable thing that we do here at the county level, People don't realize that there's children in need in the county, and you guys are doing a great job for, finding these kids some homes where they can call it their home, So again, I just like that we give this information out to the public to see that, hey, yep, we're doing other things than just whatever, So again, thank you very much. Gentlemen, I have a motion and a second. No more discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
He's all choked
Motion
up.
carried.
So much for that.
All right.
If we could maybe do a picture before we get into her adoption report, would that be?
Sure.
okay?
Photo op.
Oh,
Hey,
here.
guys, let's mix it up a little bit. Here, next that wall.
I'm gonna live, I think. If you guys
Do you have the
don't-
proclamation maybe that Katie can hold?
CPR, don't you?
Mix her up.
I'll help you out. Where's the AED at? We have an AED.
The adoption report next.
It should.
I didn't get the updated packet. I didn't get the revised one. So. You are on top of it. Katie's on top of it, or Tabitha's on top of it.
Katie's on top of it too.
Katie too.
Get that microphone away from you.
need to slide
Chairs?
sometimes is enough, I guess. We could stand like we're taking your mug shot, kind of.
Exactly.
How was that done, Mike? I don't know.
Okay, now I want
Okay.
Yeah, you do have to move over.
What are we
Who's
calling
moving?
it? What
You
color
wanna
are
be
we?
right there, now stop, yes, kind of center yourself on the.
Further?
Should be in the middle?
Yeah, you should.
So what county are we from?
Okay.
A little more? Further?
No, you're good. I'm gonna take a practice shot. I don't like it, it's too bright. Well, it's too bright on your faces.
That's
like,
right, we don't want it
Take
so
our
bright.
glasses
Oh.
off. That's right.
You guys look better in the dark.
So much more.
As long as you can see Katie, that's all we care. That's what she cares about.
Actually, that isn't much better. It's way better. Look at how good everybody looks. It's like pitch black.
All we can see is his like black face.
Oh my gosh, perfect. Thank you for your
Unbelievable.
time.
Unbelievable.
Let me give that.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't know where your chair went, Jeffrey.
As long as it's nice right here. You only take my chair.
That's there.
They're
Thank you.
supposed to be labeled.
They are, absolutely.
I got my name on mine.
Mine doesn't. You do that on purpose.
Yep. 'cause we could-
They can watch me.
I put permanent-
Already done that.
They film me.
Chair, this baby's coming down.
So because it is adoption month, and as Katie talked about, it takes special people to adopt kids like these. They probably experience trauma, a variety of challenges. So Katie did put a little bit of information together for the board to talk about these kids and where we're at. So I'm gonna just let Katie keep rolling on adoption.
Perfect.
Good. So on my, well, it'll be my second slide, I just start out with a definition of what a state ward is. And so a state ward is a child who's under the legal custody of the state. And this typically happens after the parental rights of both parents have been terminated. And then a state ward is available to be adopted. And they remain a state ward until their adoption is finalized. So when I use that term, I just want, so you know what I'm talking about. So what this slide shows is just the number of cases. The lighter blue is the number of state ward cases, so those kids that are available for adoption, and we're working towards that goal. And then the darker blue is the ones that are completed. So our trend has been, pretty steady over the last 3 years, and that is continuing. Of course, I looked at this report many times to proof it, and it wasn't until last night when I was looking that I noticed I made an error in the caption. So these are not just representing the children that were adopted in 2019, it's all of those state wards. So that's why the numbers are, I'm like, these numbers don't match. So that's what this is representing. So all of the children that are available to be adopted. And what I wanted to highlight is the time that these kids spend in foster care prior to termination. And the reason that's important is because we know that foster care placements are difficult for children. Even if they're coming from unfortunate situations, it's still a traumatic event. And so Minnesota statute tells us that we have 6 months to work reunification with families, with parents, with birth parents. They do have an opportunity to get an extension up to 6 months. But there's like 3 requirements that have to be met, and one of them is that they have to be compliant with their case plan. And so looking at this graph, you can see that the majority of our cases, kids are in foster care for 7 to 12 months. So instead of, there's a trend with our courts, instead of extensions being used as an occasional situation, you can see that it's more or less the norm. And certainly there are cases where that's warranted, but there are cases that, where birth parents maybe haven't made those efforts. So we feel that that second area of 7 to 12 months is a little bit higher than we would like to see for getting kids to permanency or to become a state ward in a timely fashion. The next slide shows the length of time that children spend in foster care once they're a state ward. So once they're free for adoption, you can see that our adoptions are very efficient, with the largest majority being 7 to 9 months. and then following that 4 to 6 months. The adoption process is a lengthy process. There's a lot of paperwork for workers to do, and there is a rigorous process with DHS. And so if there's a typo on a name on one form in the multiple that are sent, that is sent back for revision, and that it takes months. And so our workers are very diligent in filling that out, knowing that any mistake could cause delays for these children. So I'm proud of my staff in how efficiently they can move these cases along once the children are free for adoption. The pie graph shows just at the end of 2019, the number of children that I anticipate will still be left in foster care. The majority of those in the blue are children who are new state wards, and so they've really been in 0 to 6 months since their parents' rights have been terminated. Those 4 others are ones that we've had in foster or been a state ward for over 2 years. And so those are the kids that have the really high behaviors, who many of those have tried an adoptive home and have failed out because of their challenging behaviors and things like that. And so you can see there's a large gap. We can get kids adopted pretty quickly, with the exception of those really high
Katie,
needs
if
children.
I may have missed this. When you say state ward, is this that children from county they come out here? It's not the full state?
Right.
Right,
Yep,
okay.
I am just reporting on those Morrison County children.
Okay.
But the term state ward is just that they're wards of the state and free for adoption.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So generally, I would say we don't place infants for adoption, so if a mom who is just going to give birth wants to adopt or wants to give up her child for adoption, generally, we don't do those. We do those are private adoptions. They take a private agency. If we are working with a mom who has been prior terminated and becomes pregnant, then we may be adopting an infant, but it's really those kids who are in the child welfare system, so.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Zelinski.
as long as we're kind of having a question and answers thing here, I'm very curious. And Brad just said we certainly can start at a newborn. How far do we go in age with adoption?
So we have to make efforts up to the child's 18th birthday.
Okay, very good.
So even if we have a 16-year-old who is terminated,
Yep.
at that point, we do seek adoptive placement for those.
Very good, thank you.
And
Thank
actually,
you
was
very
it this
much.
year that we placed a child in an adoptive home and was adopted, I think, at 17?
Yep, early in the year.
This child was in foster care for an extended period of time and finally built a connection with a local family who had a child their age. And so now they have a forever family. It was very, a child who just struggled and no family wanted him. I believe there's even a couple of disrupted adoptions. And our staff ended up finding a family who had a connection through school, and they started to visit, and it's worked out that they ended up adopting this child. So it was very successful.
Mr. Chair, if I may, when we go back to a couple of the earlier slides on here, and the one of the first ones, in looking at, you had the majority of these children would spend 7 to 12 months before they are deemed to be wards of state. So they'd be in foster care for that period of time, and then the following slide looked at the amount of time it takes for us to place these in a foster home after that. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but so then about the average time for the majority of these individuals is about 1.5 years that they'll spend in foster care. Is that correct, or do those time lapses on those previous slides overlap?
No, you're accurate. One event, children don't become state wards until their parents are terminated. So yep, you're correct. You'd add those two together. And I would say generally kids spend about 1.5 years to 2 years in foster care from the time they're originally placed until they're adopted.
So when, do we ever look at how do we measure up in Morrison County on this compared to statewide or whatever? And don't get me wrong, I'm not questioning performance or things like that, getting more at the judicial part of this and the court's amount of time it takes for them to make a decision. I mean, what you had reported of the courts now making this length of time to be the norm rather than the exception. Now we're putting a greater amount of time in the life of a child in quasi-play, I'll say, or whatever, or whether or not that's necessary. I'm wondering if this is something that's geographical to Morrison County, or if this is something that's statewide that we need to look at addressing.
So that's actually a state, we are measured according to the state, and there is comparison against other counties. I would say we're not the only county that struggles with this. But there are certainly counties that are doing better than us. And like I said, I'm noticing this a trend with our current judicial system, and we are addressing this through CJI, which is our Children's Justice Initiative that involves the judges and attorneys, guardian ad litems, addressing this very thing about how can we shorten up that time before termination occurs, because that's really where our length of time is.
Yep.
Once they get to be state boards, that it's going pretty smoothly. But trying to shorten up that time and really only giving extensions when they're warranted. And I think that's a hard thing for the courts to do, because they see the parents sitting in front of them. They don't see the children. And so we try to bring pictures of kids to court, and if there's older kids, we often invite them to court. But when it's the parents sitting in front of them and pleading their case, it's hard for the court to say, you're done. And so they're more inclined to give extensions, even if it's not warranted. And so it is an ongoing issue, and something certainly that I've been trying to get the courts to see that when an extension is given, it's not just a second chance for a parent, it's prolonging uncertainty and distress for the child often.
As hard as it is for the court system to terminate rights, it's even harder for that child to continue in an uncertain future. And that's what we've seen in terms of trauma for kids, that permanency is more important than maybe giving more time for parents, and parents need to make a decision about how willing they are to make the changes necessary to provide a safe home for their child. So it is challenging, no doubt about it, for a court to say this parent-child relationship needs to be severed and the child needs to find a different family, because there's never a guarantee we'll find a new family for the child either, because they have a significant issues or whatever the case might be. But the longer kids are in care with an uncertain future, the more challenging it is for them to heal.
Yeah, and I appreciate the clarification on that, too, and I don't want that to be perceived that we're questioning the performance of what you're doing. And on the flip side, I'd say that we're grateful when we look at the consistency and the success rate of being able to place these children into adoptive families. I think is extremely admirable, the work that you guys are doing and the success rate that you have. But if there's issues in places that need to be addressed to expedite this faster, then, we need to probably look at those things too. So, thank you.
So moving on, the next slide just depicts who's adopting these children. So the stats go back 4 years. And I think if we went back even further, you would see that we used relatives less than we do now. And so that trend is increasing. So the yellow is 2019. And so you can see on the left there is the number of relative or kin adoptions. So kin just means somebody who has a significant relationship with the child, but maybe isn't blood related. So like Brad mentioned, that other child, the 17-year-old who was adopted earlier this year, he was friends, and the parents of that friend had a relationship with him and adopted him. Often we see teachers or people from school or churches. So that's what kin means. And so the number of those adoptions greatly outweigh the non-relative adoptions, which is there on the right. And quite frankly, it's wonderful because of the number of placements and the number of foster homes we have. Our foster homes, the ones that we have licensed and kind of ready to go in these situations, could not support the children that we're placing. So I'm thankful that we do have the relative interests that we do with many of these children. The next slide shows, in addition to the adoption, which is our most, our biggest number of permanency outcome, there are a couple other options. So last year we had 2 children who we did permanent transfers of physical and legal custody. And in both of those cases, it was to a non-custodial parent. So the child was removed from the custodial parent. We worked reunification and that wasn't successful. And instead of terminating, we just transferred custody to the other parent who was able to work with our agency and meet the needs of those 2 children. And then there's 2 other children who aged out, which means they were 18 when they left foster care. They didn't quite get to termination with their parents, but they aged out, and there are services available through the state or through grant funding for children who are 18 to 21 once they age out of foster care to help them financially, especially these children who maybe weren't in an adoptive home, they were just in a foster home and don't have the benefit of having that forever family who's kind of helping them out. And so then we do some of that and provide case management, or can provide ongoing case management if they're interested after their 18th birthday. And then my final slide, I really wanted to be able to depict to the board what, this kind of goes back to Commissioner Blaine's question about what we can do with those kids, or that timeline leading up to them being a state ward. So in 2019, there are 33 children in Morrison County that are high risk of becoming state wards. And how I have defined that is they've exhausted their entire permanency timeline. So they are over that 6 months, but they have not yet gone to permanency, either because the court hasn't granted us permission to do that, and in a few cases, there's children on a trial home visit. And what a trial home visit means is after kids have been in care and they first go back with their parents, the county maintains custody of them. So we have the oversight, but they are living with their parent. And so they have to sign a contract with our agency in the court. And really, if they have even one slip up, then the kids go back to foster care, and we would likely pursue a termination of parental rights. And so there's 33 of those kids right now that we are, or in the year of 2019, that are high risk, and so one slip away from potentially being a state ward. And then there's another 12 children that our agency has filed petitions to terminate parental rights on that won't be accomplished yet this year. So there are several other children, as you can see, that are kind of in this limbo, if you will, that our agency is working diligently to try to get to that adoptive state.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Katie, of these 33 children in this situation where they are with, let's say, a parent or whatever, and they're in that at-risk environment, would those parents then be a part of the caseload? In other words, do we have staff that works with these parents to try and keep this from happening, from them from slipping up? Are these parents open to that? Is that a service that the county through social services provides to them? Or are these parents, you're on your own, here, you've got the contract, you got to toe the line with this? Do we have interaction in that phase of this to try and have the best positive outcome?
Yeah, and really, when we have kids on a trial home visit, our workers actually work more intensely with the family at that time, because we recognize that that is a high-risk situation. And so we frequently, our workers have more contact with the children and the parents during that time. And like I said, we still have custody and oversight, so we are working very closely with the parents. And even once we return custody back, we usually still keep, especially like in drug cases where we know that relapse is frequent, we usually keep those cases open up to 6 months after we've even returned the custody. So the parents will have the kids living with, or having the children living with the parents for about a year before we finally close our case, provided they're doing well.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next report I have is healthcare. As you know, healthcare is a critical function of what we do at social services, ensuring that people have insurance. And so Cindy's here to talk a little bit about our healthcare units.
Morning, Cindy.
Good morning. I just want, I saw that said September on there, and I actually had a November one, so I just want to make sure I'm in line with what I got going here.
Hopefully I put the right one in the board packets, what she's trying to say.
Yeah, Brad, what did you do?
Without
What she
blaming
was
you,
saying.
yeah.
Very, very on the down low there.
So this is phone calls received only by the healthcare unit. There's 3 different units within the financial assistance department, and this is the calls that they take. And you can see that they're up about 50 per month from the, the last year if you divide that out. The next chart actually is broken down. See, I'm not sure that's the right chart. Is that number 3 on there?
It's number 3 on here, yeah.
Yeah,
Do I have it?
I'm a little out of whack here then.
That's because yours aren't in color
Yes.
and ours are.
It's on the back side. I think it's on the back side of you.
Right, it's on page 4. So this must be my 3. Okay, so on this one, the documents processed out of our electronic data management system, you can see too that that has gone up quite a bit. We're already at 8,400 plus, so we're on pace to exceed 10,000 documents just in the healthcare unit. And that's really important to note because a lot of their work is not done from that system. They work in the Minshire Met system, so most of the duties that they do are actually within that system. So it just shows you how much the increase in everything. My page 5. The Met's caseload, as you can see, currently has decreased a little, but sometimes that is reflective of the time of month that we pull this and how many reviews are due and how many weren't turned in, because those then aren't counted numbers.
METS is that system that we've talked about in the past, about the challenges they've had in managing a new technology system. And so these particular staff are both in METS and Maxis, and I think there'll be some information on Maxis as well, because we cannot have all of our clients in one system. So these particular staff end up being in 2 different systems.
Correct.
Question I have is, again, if you look from 2015 to 2019, the numbers are, pretty steady. I mean, they're gonna be a little up and down or more, Is that because more people are going on the system, or is that just people coming in the county, leaving the county, coming back? Can you kind of explain that?
It's actually some of both, but with this, because it had just started in 2015,
Right.
we had a lot of cases that were on in the Maxis system that hadn't yet been moved to the new system. Generally speaking, the only healthcare left on Maxis are either elderly or disabled. The only place that fluctuates a little is if there's a family and the father's disabled, we have the case on Maxis, so then if the kids are on, they would be on there too. But really, that is minimal. As far as the healthcare unit, there's only 207 cases in Maxis. And again, those are, for the healthcare unit, pretty much every one of those would be elderly or disabled.
Okay. Thank you.
You went back to back. So the Maxis one is the next one.
The one that's in purple.
one right
No,
here?
just kidding.
Okay. Actually, that is what I just got done speaking about,
You did.
gentlemen.
I just
Yeah.
noticed that, I go, oh, okay, I jumped the gun there, so.
Okay, so I'll move on from that to the healthcare counties in comparable size. That is just, kind of looking at other counties and the amount of cases that they have as well. The Region 5 counties is the next slide, and I thought that was interesting. Morrison County has the lowest percentage of population on healthcare. Granted, it's not much lower than Todd County, but it is still lower. So within our region, we do have the fewest people on healthcare assistance. The next slide is the Medicare Savings Program. And I do believe I explained this one before. This is where we pay the Medicare premium for elderly or disabled. So they're able to retain that generally about $135 per month. And a lot of these clients, that's the only program they're on. They're not on MA with it. So,
This is really a benefit for elderly residents to kind of help maintain their level of independence.
exactly. And you can see we have almost 900 clients that are on just those programs alone. There are 3 different programs, and all of them reimburse the premium, but each of them have a little bit different assistance that they have. Like when someone goes to the hospital, they may receive a Medicare bill for, $18 and some cents. When you're on the QMB program, that'll pick that up as well, but we're on the SMLB, it won't. So that's the only difference in those programs. And the last thing I have to talk about is the account validation service. And this is part of the reason for our influx in calls. This is something new. It's where we now have the ability to do a bank account, what would you call it?
Access bank accounts to verify all the income and assets they have available to them.
Right, so in the past, if clients had a bank account that they didn't report, we most likely wouldn't know about it. We would sometimes catch them by, they might slip and give us a different bank account on a review, and then it's like, well, where did this come from? So this will eliminate that and hopefully, catch all those accounts. The problem with this is most of it doesn't actually go in effect until September of 2020. But we currently have to have these forms on file for every review that comes due. So when we send these out, if the clients don't get them back in, their case ends up closing. And if it's closed for more than 30 days, we can't reinstate it. It's actually a new application for them. And for most of these clients, that is cumbersome, to say the least. They have, a lot of mental health challenges with getting paperwork in. So the social workers, the public health case managers, and the eligibility workers have gotten together. We have a list every month of everybody that has a review due, that has to get this form in, and social workers are going to people's houses to pick them up, to make sure they don't close. They're receiving multiple phone calls telling them we got to have this form or they're going to lose their health care.
This has really been an all hands on deck because of this requirement, because we don't want an elderly individual or somebody else on a waiver to close their medical assistance case, because then it affects their level of services. So it's rather confusing now that these clients are getting this request to complete this form when really we just need the form. And so fraud, waste, and abuse are critical, and this will allow us to impact that. But we also want to make sure that people don't lose their services in the process. So it's been an all hands on deck. Cindy, Karen, Cindy Niedauber, Penny,
Sarah.
Melanie, Sarah have all worked hard to make sure we know who these clients are, and if they're not in, we're trying to get a hold of them, because it is important. And this will be going on through August of next year, as all of the clients will have to supply this form, so.
And as Brad stated, they have to supply the form, but for anyone in renewal, we actually can't run the check until September of 2020, but the form must be on file.
Is
or
there a
they close.
charge to the county for this ABS program?
No, it is just allowing us access to bank accounts. So it gives permission for financial workers, eligibility workers to ask banks if there are any accounts tied to these particular clients. So,
Okay, yeah, because my question would be then, so by reading this here, if I'm a senior A and I have 3 different banks someplace and I write them down, or I might forget to write them down and I submit them on the application, this just verifies that the account is there?
Actually, no.
Okay, that's what I was getting to.
It will search out for all accounts in your name, your social security number.
Right?
But you had asked about, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
About how they can verify the accounts if I put them on the
Okay,
application?
we can't accept this as verification. That is the problem.
Okay.
All this does is identify the account. So if we find out that there is a bank account unreported from US Bank or wherever,
Right.
they have to get us verification of that account.
Who's they?
The client or
Okay.
their representative.
Okay,
And depending on the program, we may need documentation back to 3 years when they came on for long-term care because there may not have been eligibility that whole time.
okay.
And you're right, some people do just forget that they have an account.
Right.
A couple of the ones that have come through now are, $8 and some
Right.
cents sitting in an account that they didn't realize they had any longer.
And again, I'm assuming there's another way, because it states that you don't have, doesn't show your asset as a home or a car, it shows you your bank accounts, but, and then you have some other way, I'm assuming, to know that they have a house or no house or whatever.
Yep, we get to use the beacon system,
Sure.
Morrison County
Yep.
supplies, and we can find a lot through that as
All
well.
right.
that's
Thank
one of
you.
the areas where they have to gather a lot of information, especially in the long-term care unit, is on assets.
Right, yeah.
And as Cindy said, we did talk about that yesterday, that some people may have forgotten about a bank account, or a family member may not realize their parent had a bank account. So the asset verification system may actually help some families find a bank account they weren't aware of, so.
Commissioner Blaney?
I want to make sure I got this recorded correctly. You had mentioned that of the 5 region, or of the counties in Region 5, Morrison County has the fewest residents on medical assistance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Per capita,
Per capita?
Right.
Okay.
just to clarify, it's per capita, so for
Yeah.
every,
Percentage.
yeah.
Okay.
And as I noted there, it is really minimally different from Todd County, but we are still the lowest.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Cindy.
Anything else? All right, gentlemen, any questions or comments? We're good to go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple other things. So the next thing in the agenda is approve a resolution allowing me to sign a Department of Human Services screening grant agreement between our agency and the Minnesota Department of Human Services. DHS is cleaning up their grant writing and grant agreements between themselves and other entities. And so I'm asking the board to approve a resolution allowing me to sign this particular grant agreement. The grant is for $34,943. It's a grant we've received for many years. It's varied depending upon the work that we do. So our staff and corrections staff screen kids in child protection and in corrections for mental health concerns. And then if they do have mental health concerns, we're expected to move, go the next step and look at getting them some mental health services. So
Jim, I'll ask for a motion and a second. I have a motion, I need a second.
Second?
I have a second. Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
So I do have the resolution with Tabitha to sign, and I'll take that and send it in with the grant agreement.
Okay. I'll get that signed. Anything else, Brad?
And then I have a new shared services agreement. It is with Sourcewell for our contract management services. So we, again, are cleaning up some agreements between us and Sourcewell for some of the services they're providing. We've had a contract manager with Sourcewell for about 4 years. And And so this is just now approving this contract and this agreement between our agency and Sourcewell for that particular service.
Gentlemen, I'll ask for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion, I need a second.
Second.
Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And that's all I have this morning. Nothing on the
right.
public health side today. And then I would just remind the board that there is some good smells coming from over this way. So if
I can
if
smell
you're
that.
able to hang around, there's lots of good food, so.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
Brad.
thanks, Brad. Well, let's close the meeting, says he, no, I'm just kidding. So anyway, moving on, looks like administration report.
Yes, I have a few different action items, but maybe Amy wants to sneak in first here, because I didn't realize Brad would be so windy.
Amy's not on the agenda, is she?
Yeah. She had one item that we wanted to
Oh,
discuss,
no,
so
you guys
if wouldn't
willing to
mind.
talk to Amy? All right, come on up,
Yeah.
Amy.
Let me see.
Morning, Amy.
Let me see you tell her no.
I had talked to Deb yesterday about maybe squeaking in before her admin report. As you know, we do have an environmental assessment worksheet that's going to be going to the Environmental Quality Board. As discussed prior, you wanted to have a public meeting on this, so I'm here to set that date. So when we advertise and do all of our required public notices for this, we can advertise that public meeting.
Do you have some dates that you would be
I
interested?
do.
All right.
My thought would be to have it as part of your regular county board meeting on December 17th.
So it'd be part of, okay, it'd be during the
Correct, it
board
would be
meeting?
part of the
Okay.
agenda, yes.
All right, December 17th.
And that would still be within the 30-day comment period for this EAW.
So
it
can we
would fit
squeeze that
nicely.
in, Deb, on the 17th? Would you have no problem?
Yep, we should have plenty of time to advertise all that
All
and
right.
get everything going.
Gentlemen, you okay with that?
You bet.
All right.
I'm
Okay.
missing that meeting. I got surgery on the 13th, so,
okay.
but just so
All
you
right.
know that.
So we'll
All right.
have, and it's gonna be for the AIS, right? Or not? the
No,
AIS.
it'll be for
EA.
the,
EAW.
for the
EAW, I'm
EAW,
sorry.
correct.
You said that.
All right, and then can I say at 9 AM?
Yeah, we usually like to have those right
Okay.
away, yeah.
All right, then I will include that in all of my required notices.
Fantastic.
And then just the last thing is we do have a viewing for autumn antlers this afternoon. Just wondering how many of you are going, so I know when our group is complete.
I am gonna be picking up Dave Stish, so me and him will be going out
Okay.
there probably, I don't know, what time we have to be there? 1:30, right?
1:30.
It's about a half an hour to get out there, so.
Okay. Anybody else?
I got a meeting I got another
I'm
meeting.
thinking I'm gonna go.
Okay, Jeff? I just want to make sure the party is complete when we get there, so we don't leave anybody behind when they go on the tour.
But I'll see you tonight.
Yes.
What's
Cauldron. All
Cauldron
right.
Township.
All right, thank you. That's all I
Thanks,
have.
Amy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I have a few different items. The first action item is to approve the tentative agreement with our AFSCME Public Works Unit for 2020 through 2022, falling in line with very similar parameters that we've had with other tentative agreements. And so the Public Works Group approved that contract for that 3-year term, asking you to do the same.
Gentlemen, I ask for a motion and a second.
So moved.
I have a motion, I need a second.
Second.
All right, any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, we have 2 left. The Social Services AFSCME unit just hasn't had the opportunity yet to take that for a vote, so I'm hoping by the end of the week we know the results of that. And then I did meet with our dispatch group last week, and that went very well, very brief, and we came to an agreement pretty easily, and they will be taking that to their group also. So those 2 yet, you'll see.
All right, yeah, just a note, gentlemen, I know if we had a negotiation with the Great River Regional, we signed a 3-year agreement with them with a option to open on the 3rd year based on the health insurance, but yeah, it went very easy, so.
Yep, things are good. In terms of where we're at with that, I know in conducting those meetings, I've had feedback from those that have been involved for quite some time, and it's been positive, and so that's good when you can have a positive relationship with the staff that you work with and those that are there every day doing the work that we need them to do. It's nice to have that, because sometimes it can be contentious and nobody wants that. And a few other updates, or another action item actually that I have that I'm sneaking in. There is a ex officio nomination process happening for the Sourcewell is board, correct? And so Commissioner Wilson actually encouraged me to ask you if you'd be willing to nominate me. The appointment would be for, they divide it out into subregions, subregion 4, which includes city and county government. So as a identified chief executive officer, I would be eligible for that. And so I think given the relationship that we have with Sourcewell and the ability to learn and to have input into that operation, certainly it would be something that I would be interested in if you're willing to consider that.
Gentlemen, I would ask for a motion and a second for more discussion.
I'll make it.
Second.
I have a second. Any more discussion? Any questions, comments?
I think it's important that we have people on there if possible. There's a lot of, what I think Deb could bring is the county side of what happens. Sourcewell is always looking for new ideas on things to do. We have two people. We have one person that represents city and county, and we have two for school districts.
I thought, if I remember, don't you sit on that board?
I do, but this is ex officio.
I understand that, but,
I do.
okay, I'm just, curious, because I sit on boards that I'm just an ex officio myself, and there's no county administrator there. I thought, I'm just putting this out as a question, is that if you're there, why do we need her there?
I think she brings a whole different level, like John Rademacher did sit on it from the city of, it's usually a city administrator that does sit on those, or county administrator. They bring a little different perspective than what I would even bring to the board on things that we can possibly, Sourcewell has, we always are trying new and different things, and they can bring those things that they feel will help more than I feel like I can.
In one of these meetings? What time of the day?
They're Tuesdays at, Tuesdays in the evening.
Evening, okay, I was gonna say, whoa, I didn't know that one, that's a problem.
Well, that's right,
This is monthly and
Monthly.
and you have the time to devote to this and.
Well, I would make the time. Mike's talked to me about this a number of years ago already, and the position wasn't open. I like to try to have a few different committee or different points of influence throughout the work that I do. I sit on a LOGIS Health Insurance Committee that's been very beneficial and interesting. I help with the Administrator Association. These types of positions are things that somebody has to step up and serve. And so Mike thought it would be something that would be interesting and advantageous to be a part of. And
Are
so
these meetings at like 7 o'clock or 5 o'clock or?
5:30.
Because I don't want it to
But no-
interrupt her work here at the county that she, so.
But no, this is a nomination because all cities and counties will
Right.
vote for whoever they choose to do this. So
No, I understand that.
Mr. Chair, I would like to thank Ms. Gruber for this. This is called leadership. This is called involvement. This is called being there when you're able to be there to get the job done. I think this is imperative that she be on this committee. And I realize that just because I'm saying that or just because we're saying that does not automatically put her there.
Right.
But
Right.
I think it's imperative that she's in the running for this.
Well, it only benefits the county and the cities.
Absolutely.
And school districts within our area, so.
thanks.
All right, well, that's what we have for discussion. So we have a motion and a second. Those in favor of nominating, I think that's the correct term, to have her sit on the, as ex officio for Sourcewell. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right. One other thing I just wanted to let you know is that Thursday I'll be hosting a group. It's the AMC has a group called the Pathways. It is a group that was formed a number of years ago for new county administrators. It's been kind of a mentorship group. And so there'll be about 15 in the group that we'll be hosting today from different colleagues of mine across the state. They oftentimes meet centrally. And so I'm going to have them here, show them a little bit about what we do. And it's a great networking and, like I said, mentorship. This job is unique in the fact that there's not a whole bunch of people that do this. And so those of us that are able to work together and really bounce things off of each other and kind of have that relationship really helps solidify those new folks in the industry, for lack of a better term. And so I'm anxious to have those Gary Wires from David Drown and Associates, who really leads I would say, is the primary recruiter for administrators across the state. They're a firm that works with many counties when looking for administrators, and the turnover has been substantial across the state. And so I'm almost considered one of the old administrators, which I'm not incredibly fond of in certain regards, but it is what it is. So it's nice to be a part of those groups and to work with those folks across the state. And so we'll be having them here, and I look forward to hosting them on Thursday. So other than that, I just have to throw out a go Piers, and that's why my voice is the way it is. So we're headed to the championship game, and it's been a fun ride with both my boys, kind of on the team, one injured, but at least they're a part of it.
They're
and
there.
So it's been fun.
Anything else, Deb?
No, thank you. Nope.
All right, so anyway, before we do the schedules, I just have one thing we have somebody in the audience, and I want to put it out to TV land. We have one left in the audience, and that would be our press person from Morrison County who is leaving Morrison County. So again, I want to thank him for his efforts to serve as the reporter for Morrison County. And we bought some cake, and I think there's some juice over there because we're going to miss you, Tyler. I'm speaking for hopefully the whole board here, because I think you did a great job, and I just want to know people out there in Neverland that we're an asset to have us here. And again, I think you did a great job as reporting fairly, and we really appreciated that. So we miss you. And again, I just want to stick around here until after we do our schedules, that we can have a little cake and a little BS session. How's that sound? All right.
Thank you. I've really appreciated covering you guys and just the incredible professionals that work here at the county. It's always been easy to deal with staff here, so you guys have an excellent staff that has always just been the epitome of professionals.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you, Tyler.
Mr. Chair, this young man has been a model of professionalism in his work, and you're exactly correct. We're going to miss you sitting at the table here, and the city of Austin is getting one of the finest, and we wish you the best. And when you come back through, when you come back through Morrison County, make sure you come and kick the doors in here. Awesome.
All right.
Good luck to you.
Tyler, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. I appreciate it.
Well, with that, let's do our schedules, and we'll start with Commissioner Jelinski.
What date are we at?
November 24th through
Okay.
December 7th.
December 24th through to December 7th.
Ready to go,
Yep.
Tabitha?
Yeah.
The 25th at 3:30 in the afternoon, I've got a Stand Up For You meeting, and that's at the high school at room 123. It's 3:30 in the afternoon. At 7 o'clock that evening, I believe we have a planning commission meeting. The 26th at 8:30 in the morning, we've got a planning session, followed by at 10 o'clock or whenever we get to it, a building committee. On the 28th, the State Emergency Communications Board meeting has been canceled, and you don't care about that. On the 1st of December, the chaplaincy pizza party goes from 11 o'clock till 1 o'clock. That's at the VFW in Little Falls.
What is that, Jeff?
The chaplaincy
What date,
pizza
though?
party, I'm sorry, Sunday, December 1st. And that is from 11 o'clock until 1 o'clock at the VFW here in Little Falls.
Good, thank you.
On the 2nd of December at 6 PM, we've got a Morrison County Public Safety meeting here at the Government Center in this room
What time is that?
at 6 PM.
Okay.
On the 3rd, at 9 o'clock in the morning, we've got a county board meeting. And at 7 o'clock that evening, I believe there's a Board of Adjustments meeting. On the 5th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I've got a State Emergency Communications Board Legislative Committee phone conference that is held at my house. On the 6th, at 8:30 in the morning, we've got a TSWAC meeting at the landfill. On the 7th, at 5 o'clock, I believe at 5 o'clock in the evening, it's the Harding Horsin' Around Parade. And I think that goes, Mike, I'll look at Mike Wilson and say, from like 5 to 6, right? that Harding Horse and Roan thing.
It's probably about an hour.
Yeah,
I'm afraid.
and I think that's the date, I think I have that correct. And Mr. Chair, that should conclude my stuff.
All right, how about Commissioner Blaine?
The only thing I can add to that would be on December 5th, South Country Health Alliance
At 9 AM.
at 9 AM.
Do you have a Region 5? Is that you on the 28th?
That would be Thanksgiving Day, so that's, but thank you.
All right, thanks, Commissioner Blaine. Commissioner Wilson?
Nothing to add?
All right, Commissioner Lemire? Anything else above and
I got
beyond?
one thing, I'm trying to find it. 26th November, HRA at 1 o'clock.
All right, looks like you covered everything there, so we should be good to go. Gentlemen, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Need a second.
Second.
Any more discussion? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion, we're adjourned at 10:45.